Port Credit, the jewel in the crown of Mississauga, has been a center for commerce and an attraction for visitors for hundreds of years. Archaeological evidence suggests that Iroquoian and Algonquian-speaking peoples were attracted to the Credit River Valley over thousands of years. By 1700, an Ojibwa group known as the Mississauga had driven the Iroquois from the north shore of Lake Ontario. In the 1720s, the French had established many trading posts around Lake Ontario, one of which was located near the mouth of the Credit River, a name derived from the custom of allowing native peoples to trade on credit. After the decline of French control in the region, the British continued to trade with the native Mississaugas. In 1805, the British signed a land treaty, 13A, with the Mississaugas. The Mississaugas retained 1 mile of strip on each side of the Credit River from Cranberry Cove, now Bruckner Rhododendron Gardens, to Hiawatha Park. Settlement of Toronto Township began in earnest after 1805, and August 2, 2005, marked the 200th anniversary of this treaty signing. In 1818 and 1820, additional treaties were signed between the Crown and the Mississauga, which opened up the 1 mile strip on either side of the Credit River to settlement. The Port Credit Harbor Company was formed in 1834 for the construction of the harbor, and the village of Port Credit was surveyed on the west bank in 1835. When the Mississaugas relocated to the new Credit Reserve in 1847, the Credit River was opened to commercial expansion, and Port Credit went through a period of tremendous economic growth as a harbor. The harbor allowed Toronto Township to export goods such as textiles, strawberries, grains, and wood by loading them onto larger boats which could carry them to larger markets. The prosperous period declined in the mid-1850s as a result of both a Great Fire, which destroyed the west end of the harbor, and the construction of the Great Western Railway, which diverted commerce away from the village. For most of the last century, the primary building materials for construction in Toronto was Dundas shale from the bottom of Lake Ontario. The vessels which carried the stone and the sailors who hauled the stone from the lake bottom were called stone hookers, and a great many of them were based at Port Credit. The stone hooking trade kept the port alive, and Port Credit slowly began to recover. The peak of the stone hooking trade was in the 1880s, when no less than 23 stone hooking vessels operated out of Port Credit, providing a significant boost to the local economy. Fishing was also a major industry for the harbor, supplying fish to markets as far as Toronto and Hamilton. The arrival of the St. Lawrence Starch Company in 1889 and other large industries such as a brickyard and refinery started to revitalize Port Credit. The St. Lawrence Starch Company, perhaps best known for its beehive corn syrup, was founded in 1889 by John Gray and Archie Hutchison, and operated in Port Credit for 100 years. The original factory was constructed on 10 acres of land at Lakeshore Road and here Ontario Street, and consisted of 3 buildings, a small wharf, and employed 25 workers. During the 20th century, the company expanded rapidly, eventually covering 27 acres of land. The factory was demolished in June of 1994, but the administration building remains today. This building was constructed during the Great Depression by the employees of the company in order to prevent layoffs. Another very important industry in Port Credit was the brickyard. It began operating in 1889 on land purchased by Thomas Nightingale. It was in operation until 1936, when it was sold to be used as a coal yard. Expanded and upgraded many times, at its height the brickyard employed some 250 people, built its own rail yard and wharf for shipping, and was producing in excess of 1 million bricks per week. One of the most familiar sights near any harbor is a lighthouse, and Port Credit has had its share of them. The first lighthouse was constructed in 1863 by Frederick Chase Capriol, a businessman who wished to develop Port Credit into an industrial town. In 1936, the old lighthouse was accidentally burned. The current lighthouse was constructed in 1991, and from its deck, one can get a very good view of the Credit River, as well as the Port Credit Marina and harbor. As Port Credit grew, community and recreational facilities developed. Port Credit was incorporated as a village in 1914, acquired town status in 1961, and was amalgamated into the city of Mississauga in 1974. Clark Memorial Hall was built in 1922 and became a gathering place for the community. It served as the Port Credit municipal offices from 1941 to 1974. The hall is still being used today by the community. Today, Port Credit retains a strong community pride and spirit and a wonderful history.